Right, stop. Right, okay. So link. There we go.
Okay.
Right, so the link should be up for you now, Sluggo.
Yeah, it is. It's coming.
There it is. So the link should be up for you now, Sluggo.
Yeah, it is. It's coming.
Does that work?
Yep.
Right. So the link should be up for you now, Sluggo.
Yeah, it is. It's coming.
Does that work?
Yeah, it's working.
Right, and obviously you have to mute that now so we can
Okay.
hear ourselves properly. Does that work?
Yeah, it's working.
Right, and obviously you have to mute that now so we can
Okay.
hear ourselves properly.
Where do I mute
Does that
it?
work?
Yeah, it's working.
Just you see on the corner, like when you go down to the YouTube video, it says pause forward, and there's like a little sound
Where do I
speaker.
mute it?
Just,
Yeah, it's working.
just you see on the corner, like when you go down to the YouTube video, it says pause forward, and there's like a little sound
Where do I
speaker.
mute it? Yeah, hang on.
Just you see on the corner, like when you go down to the YouTube video, it says pause forward, and there's like a little sound
Where do I
speaker.
mute it? Yeah, hang on.
Just you see on the corner, like when you go down to the YouTube video, it says pause forward, and there's like a little sound
Where do I
speaker.
mute it? Yeah, hang on.
Just you see on the corner, like when you go down to the YouTube video, it says pause forward. All muted there, Sluggo?
I hope so.
Right. Right. Just give me
I don't
2
have any
seconds.
background noise. I don't have any background noise now, so we're
Yeah, perfect. But can you see the questions, like all the question bar on the side there?
I can.
Right. Okay. So what I'm going to do, everyone. So while I'll get everything sorted, if you can get your questions coming in, I will introduce Sluggo soon. But we've had a bit of a technical difficulty, which is not surprising on live Q&As. But I'm going to get this link out to social media, and then we'll get chatting. But yeah, Sluggo. So what have you been up to today? While I'll get this stuff out.
So I have been busy writing some more books. I'm working on a series about a fictional series that a young man who's 15 years old is befriended by a former astronaut who is teaching him how to fly a Mach 6 vehicle. And he's building it in his backyard garage with parts he bought on eBay. It's called
Wow, that's it.
And I have about 4 of the books planned out, written in my head. The first book is about the boy. The second one is about the astronaut and his life. The third one, they weaponize the vehicle. And in the fourth one, the old man has passed away and he's hid the vehicle somewhere in the Nellis Range. And now the boy, who's now in his own Air Force career, has to figure out where it is hid in the Nellis Range, and it's actually hid in Area 51. Imagine that. Wow. And another thing that I'm doing is I've just started, is called Wall Pilot. And there are a number of graphics companies out there that make the sports stars life size that you can put on your walls. There is not many companies that have aviation graphics for aviation enthusiasts. And for about 8 years, I have been friends with gentlemen who make model airplane decal sheets. And their instruction sheets have these gorgeous profile drawings for the instructions to show where all the markings go, all the water slide decals go. And believe it or not, my wife said, you know, I think I've got a way that we can bring these to a broader audience. And I found a printer that will print these 4-foot, 5-foot, 6-foot, 8-foot profile drawings. And you can peel them off, stick them on your walls. They'll have the patches with them and so forth. And I'm getting a lot of interest in this. A lot of people are contacting me going, hey, can you do like an F4 from Vietnam, tail number 235 that got a MiG kill in August of 1972? Believe it or not, one of my artists already has it drawn. He showed it to me this morning. So it only takes a matter of minutes to recreate a new graphic of an airplane, your favorite airplane from your favorite squadron. But the really cool thing, Mike, is we can personalize it with your name on the canopy rails.
Wow, so, that's awesome.
If there's an airplane out there that you've always wanted to have on your walls with your name on it, Wall Pilot can do that for you. And it just takes a matter of minutes to adjust the graphic. And the two guys that I have that are the artists have done a great job of doing histories of squadrons and airplanes. One guy has 10,000 profile drawings to include all the way back to World War I and Fokker DR7s, Ford trimotors, wow. F-86s. He's got 10,000 profile drawings in his computer. And the other gentleman has got a lot, every F-15, every F-16 squadron in the United States Air Force back 30 years to Desert Storm. I mean, just incredible.
Wow, I mean, stuff. Like, where can we find this out, Mark? Because I've been following this Wall Pilot for quite a while. But is it a new thing for yourself, or is it a new business?
Yeah, it is. It's a new business. So 9 years ago, we were trying to start this. The website they wanted like $100,000 for. And unfortunately, at the same time we were trying to start it, my son was diagnosed with cancer and subsequently passed away. And I'm just coming back to it now because we've figured out a better way to make the website. There's a group of people that actually have the template, so it'll go up fairly fast. And these things aren't going to be that expensive. It's comparable to the price of the Fatheads Sports Star graphics, which sell for anywhere between $59 to $89. But imagine this, Mike. You can have Rico Rodriguez, F-15, tail number 114, that he got 2 MiG-29 kills in on your wall. Okay.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And like I said, some of these guys have these built all the way back, or these profiles all the way back 30 years. And in one case, Jack has got DR7, Fokker DR7, Ford trimotors, ME-109s, the whole works. And yes, for all of you in England, we are going to do Royal Air Force, Royal Navy aircraft such as F-4s, Harriers, and Typhoons. So you'll be able to personalize them with your name on them. We have right and left side views. We can even put weapons on them so that it looks like they're flying a combat mission, the whole works. Really excited about this. It's been a lot of fun doing the research for this. And like I said, my two artists that are helping me with this have a lot of these already drawn. It's just a matter of adjusting them based on the customer's wants and needs and their requirements. Change tail numbers, the whole works. Good stuff.
Right, so before we get I'm going to get everyone getting their questions in. So I'm going to introduce Mark himself because we are a bit late on this. Again, technical difficulties. But Mark was a former KC-135 pilot. He's also driven an aircraft carrier, if I'm right, Mark.
Yes.
And he's also had time on the S3, I'm guessing, B Viking.
Yes.
So, Mark, tell us how you became, well, before we get into the questions, you became a tanker pilot, but then you drove a carrier. Let's talk about that.
Right after Operation Anaconda, I went out to the USS John F. Kennedy that was out in the Indian Ocean. And they obviously have to replenish the aircraft carrier at sea. They can't bring it into port and send it back out. So what happens is another ship comes up next to it that's full of burgers, hot dogs, bombs, and fuel. And what happened was is a lieutenant that was supposed to drive the aircraft carrier didn't show up for his shift. And the captain of the ship, Harv Henderson, looked at me and says, "Hop in there, Sluggo. Go ahead and drive the ship while we're underway refueling." And I turned back to Harv and I looked at him and I said, "Sir, with all due respect, are you out of your mind?" You know? And of course, everybody in this auxiliary conning tower, which is a big wing that's off the bridge, 14 stories above the water,
Wow.
are all looking at me like, "Yeah, boss, you're not going to let Air Force do this, right?" And he goes, "No, so hop in there. It's just like flying formation in the airplane." And it's really quite simple once you start doing it and you start looking at it. You make 1 degree heading changes, 1% RPM increases on the propellers as the carrier gets heavier, and you maintain 18 knots in the water. And you have a big screen in front of you, a computer screen up here above you, that has all of those things on it. And there's a blue line that's on the ship beside you. And believe it or not, Mike, you stay in formation with PVC pipe. There's
Wow. Okay.
a PVC pipe Christmas tree out your window that has like these little sticks coming out of it that say, "Here's the 180 line," which has got a green band around it. That's what you want to do. And you put it on the water line of the ship next to you, the USS Seattle, and that's how you maintain 180 feet away. It's really that simple. And the 1 degree heading changes and the 1% RPM thrust adjustments on the propellers. And I did this for 50 minutes. We took on about 400,000 pounds of gas, 300 bombs, 6,000 hamburger patties, and 6,000 hot dogs, and the buns for them too. So
Wow.
it was just crazy watching all of this, because that's how they keep the 19-year-old kids fed. That's how they keep the fuel on the airplane, on the carrier. That's how they keep the bombs on the aircraft carrier. And what's really amazing is they have to do this every 3 days, Mike. Every 3 days they go through this.
Wow.
To keep the
Jeez.
carrier going. Yeah. Yeah. So the USS Seattle goes back into port, loads up on all the fuel, the bombs, and the food and everything, and then goes back out, finds the aircraft carrier, hooks up next to it, and off they go again.
So I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you a question, Sluggo, while we still get people coming in, because obviously we're a bit late here. But so, which aircraft did you enjoy refueling the most? Was there an aircraft that was easier than the others?
Mike, the most unusual and the funnest aircraft to do was hands down the F-117, the stealth fighter.
Ah, cool.
I will never forget the first time that I refueled the F-117. It was during Desert Shield. It was only a couple days after I had gotten there that they had to read me into this top secret program that this was a part of. And we were refueling them down in southern Saudi Arabia. We took off as a 3 ship of tankers. We were in the lead aircraft with 2 others behind us. We refueled 6 F-117s. And I'll never forget sitting in the jump seat, Mike, and John Smallwood, who had been a pilot at the previous base I was at, turned around, tapped me on the knee and says, "Hey, Mark, take a look outside." And here's this F-117 just hanging there. And it's such an unusual shape to see out next to you because of the triangular shape of it. It's just really weird seeing one of these airplanes pull up next to you, okay? And my boom operator was in the back with another instructor, and he was kind of showing him, here's the things you do and so forth, you know, because it's got the radar absorbent material on it. You have to be very careful how you put the nozzle in the receptacle and so forth. And I watched it from up front for a second. The fighters got refueled, the F-117s got refueled, went and did a practice strike mission, came back 35 minutes later. And so I went to the back of the airplane because I wanted to see this from the back. And by that time, my boom operator was in the couch and everything. And you just see this black shape come up at you. It's the craziest thing. You can see it coming at you. It doesn't have all of its lights on when it's kind of far away, but it turns all the lights on and everything. And you just see this black arrowhead shape coming up at you. And my boom operator was screaming through the whole thing, "This is the cat's ass. This is the cat's ass." We were having so much fun watching this and seeing this happen that I'll just never forget doing these F-117 missions. And I've had the opportunity to see it from the other side, flying in the backseat of an F-15, which of course was really cool to see it from the receiver side. When I was flying the S-3 Vikings, I got to see probe and drogue refueling from the other end and see what that was like. But Mike, I will never forget the first night I refueled F-117 stealth fighters, because it was just eerie. It was just weird seeing this black shape outside your window. And what was really interesting too, Mike, was when we were on the southbound leg of our orbit, the moon was actually behind the F-117s, and you could see the pilots kind of like fussing with things in the cockpit, while they're sitting there looking down at us like this, trying to stay in formation. It was just one of the most memorable flights I've had in my 24-and-a-half-year career flying tankers. It was so much fun.
Also, obviously, we've got some questions coming here, but I'm going to ask you before you can get into them,
Okay.
Sluggo. Did you know about the F-117s at this point?
Yes, I did. And the reason I knew is because a good friend of mine was an F-117 pilot in one of the squadrons. And about 6 months before Desert Shield kicked off, I had been in Las Vegas and had seen him and had talked to him. And I asked him, I said, "So, Ray, you're flying A7s at Nellis. There's no A7s on the ramp at Nellis." He kind of smiled at me and he goes, "I fly the black jet, Mark." He and I were schoolmates at Brigham Young University. And he told me, he says, "Hey, I fly F-117s up at Tonopah." And he went into his room and actually pulled a patch off of his flight jacket and gave it to me. I still have it, the Grim Reaper patch. It's one of my very prized possessions because at that time period, it was kind of a classified patch. They weren't supposed to let it out. And he actually handed one to me, and I still have that patch in my closet. Really cool patch too. So, but
awesome. Well,
so I'd heard about it. Everybody had heard about it. They had already sent that really bad picture of it out. But seeing one up close and personal, that's a picture I'll never forget. Never.
Awesome, right? Well, if you can see on the side there, Mark, if you scroll up to the top, the first question is from an absolute stunning name, Mark Hungwell. So if you go down from there, just you crack on there, Sluggo.
Yeah. It's interesting that you asked that question, Mark, because I've been reading the 2 books about the Red Eagle Squadron. And believe it or not, I just came in contact with a guy who flew for the Red Eagle Squadron. He flew MiG-23s and MiG-21s. Those airplanes are not refuelable. So we never refueled the Red Eagle Squadron airplanes. The Russians' philosophy was like point defense. The airplanes would go up, intercept enemy airplanes, come back down, reconstitute, and go back up. So those airplanes were not air refuelable. But the Red Eagle Squadron had such a fascinating history and how they did things. And this guy that I'm doing graphics for his hangar was a Red Eagle Squadron driver, and he flew MiG-23s and MiG-21s. He loved flying the MiG-21, really nimble airplane, but the MiG-23 was not a very nimble airplane. It was not very maneuverable, but it was just frickin' fast. He said he had it at 40,000 feet one day doing a functional test flight. They'd done some maintenance on it, and he had it going Mach 2.2 at like 42,000 feet. And it was just humming, okay? So the constant peg program that ended in 1988, I think they disestablished in 1990, was an incredible training opportunity for our guys. And if you go back and you look at Desert Storm, a majority of those F-15 pilots had probably been through the program, had fought MiG-21s, had fought with MiG-23s, and a majority of our MiG kills during Desert Storm were MiG-21s and MiG-23s. So they knew how the F-15 would fight against them and how they would do things. But of course, they couldn't tell anybody how they knew that, simply because at that time period, it was a very highly classified program, the Constant Peg program. But there's two great books out about it now, called the MiG Squadron and the Red Eagle Squadron, that you can buy. And one was by one of its commanders, Gale Peck. Colonel Gale Peck wrote one of the books, and there's even some pictures in it too. Some really great stories of how they trained and the things that they did to help get our guys ready for what eventually became Desert Storm and shooting down a lot of MiGs. And I've got to add one thing. The one thing that makes our Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps pilots so good at what they do is training. Training like at Top Gun, training like at the weapons school, the Air Force's weapons school. The Marine Corps has Marine Aviation Weapons and Tactics Squadron 1. We train to a very, very fine razor's edge. I helped create the KC-135 weapons school. We had over 400 academic hours, 18 5-hour flights, 3 sims, and a graduate level paper that you accomplished in 19 weeks. But when you came out of those schools, the weapons school and Top Gun, you really had a lot of knowledge on the enemy and how to do your job. And that is what has made not only our Air Force, but the Royal Air Force that comes over and fights with us, and Red Flag and so forth. That's what makes us so good, is the training that we go through and the education that we go through, and reading about all of the different adversaries that we have and how they function and how their airplanes work and so forth. And training and education really makes a difference on the battlefield, really does. So I see there's another question down here, a very fascinating one. It says, suppose a 135 in KC-10 is over the Pacific and a Tu-22 is running low on gas, ready to ditch as a result. Would the tanker be able to intervene? Well, isn't that a moral dilemma? Believe it or not, their probes and our drogues are compatible. I don't think that a Tu-22 would ever come up and want to get gas from us, though. They carry so much gas, too. They can fly very long missions. Early in the war in Syria, they were taking off out of their bases in Russia, flying across Iran, striking ISIS targets in Syria, and going back. But one of the things that you have to remember, too, is to fill up a bomber using probe and drogue is really, really, sorry, my son just walked in, is really time intensive, because it takes a lot of gas to fill those up, over 100,000 pounds, and you're only offloading about 1,000 pounds a minute to these receivers. So probe and drogue and filling up bombers takes a very long time. I just don't see a Russian airplane pulling up behind us, though, and asking for gas. There are enough Russian tankers along the Pacific coast that could come out and refuel those bombers, and would probably do so. That's kind of how I'd answer that. Now, I will tell you something very interesting. During the Cold War, when the Russian Bear bombers and so forth would launch out of Russia and fly by Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, our tankers would launch with F-15s and an AWACS and actually fly right up next to the Bear bombers while they were doing their mission. And I had a boom operator that took some very fascinating pictures and video of them next to the Bear bomber. And you could hear the props in the video while he was inside the tanker flying formation next to it with F-15s on the other side and so forth. Really fascinating stuff. So that was a mission that we did fairly regularly during the Cold War. And I understand, as some of you have seen, the bombers are flying a lot more missions now and doing a lot more things. And we're starting to fly some more of these missions. Very fascinating missions. All right, I'm just going down the thing here. Mike, you still on with me here? I haven't heard your voice for a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay,
Yep.
good. John Ellis has a thing here where he talks about, and there's been a lot of articles recently about MiG-29s, and some of you may have seen the pictures of the Su-27s fighting with the F-16s. So I guess the secret's out. Again, it all gets back to training and training as realistically as you can in dogfighting skills and other things. And another example is the weapons school has what's called its advanced integration stage, where all 18 divisions get together the last 2 weeks of the school. And they do close air support and air superiority and like an opening night scenario where the low observable airplanes, the stealthy airplanes, the B-2s, the F-35s, the F-22s, go in and knock back the integrated air defenses and so forth. It's an amazing thing to watch. They have joint terminal attack controllers on the ground that are doing the close air support. They have what's called a non-combatant evacuation exercise where C-130s actually come in and land and simulate loading people up from an embassy on the back of the C-130 with A-10s covering them and Predators watching the threats on the ground. I mean, it's really an amazing thing to watch. So I loved my time at the weapons school. I learned a lot while I was there. It was really hard creating a weapons school. It wasn't a really fun job, but it was a very educational experience for me. But really a lot of fun. So, all right, let me see what else. The Polish MiG-29s did refuel off the Dutch KC-10s. Don't think they can, because the Polish MiG-29s are probe and drogue, and the Dutch KC-10s are boom only. They don't have drogues, unless there's been a change in that recently, and I don't think there has. And you have to remember, the Dutch are now buying the A330 Voyager like the RAF has. And that airplane has an incredible capability. And let me talk about that just real quick too. One of the things that we've learned from refueling all of the different airplanes, not only the Navy and the Marine Corps, but also our coalition partners, is we have to have a tanker that we can fill back up. It has to have drogues, and it has to have a boom. It created a lot of problems for us planning the invasion of Iraq when we had DC-10s that have probe and drogue capability and boom capability and are air refuelable, but there was only about 33 of them in the AOR. And so that created a lot of scheduling problems for us because of some of the larger offload, and we couldn't refuel all of the different airplanes that came up. In emergency situations, the KC-10 is the perfect airplane for fuel emergencies. I can park it over some place, have tankers come and give it gas and keep it filled up. And it only takes about 2 minutes for it to go from drogue refueling to boom refueling. So you can do just about any airplane that comes up, whether it be F-15Es, F-18Es, the RAF Typhoons, it doesn't matter. And after the invasion of Iraq, I was able to talk to Boeing, and I told them this. And that's why the KC-46 has air refueling capability, can get gas in the air, has baskets, has a centerline drogue as well as wingtip pods, and a centerline boom. So it's really makes it a versatile tanker. And to have 179 of those in the fleet, once we do have them in the fleet, is going to be an incredible capability for the Air Force. Now, the Australians have that capability. I understand that the Voyagers, the RAF Voyagers, are going to go back to Madrid and get booms on them. So that really helps us a lot when we're planning big air campaigns, to be able to do every aircraft that comes up to it. Because there was a number of times where probe receivers came up to boom only airplanes and went, oops, you know, and we had to really scramble in the air to find a drogue tanker. So, matter of fact, the first night of the war, there was actually a not too funny story where a big package of Navy airplanes pulled up to a boom tanker, and we had to kind of shuffle the deck again to get everything straightened out while they were flying in the air using gas. Crazy, huh? Martin, I think I may have just answered your question about hose and versus boom. Here's another historical note for you. The air refueling world really owes a debt of gratitude to the English and Sir Alan Cobham. He was really the one person who kept air refueling technology going during the interwar years, during World War II, and patented the air refueling system, the drogue refueling system, and so forth. When it came time to refuel big bombers like B-47s and B-52s, it took 110 minutes to fill up a B-47 from another B-47 using hose and drogue. And that was when Curtis LeMay said, we've got to find a better way to do this. And in 1947, Air Force Materiel Command went to Boeing and asked them, is there a better way to do this? And how can we offload more gas into our bombers faster? And the test program that was developed from that is where we got the boom system that we use now. And that was put on a KB-29 to refuel another KB-29, and that test went very well. And so that is when Curtis LeMay said, start putting booms on all of the KB-29s. Some of them had drogues, some of them had booms. The M models were drogues, the P models were booms. The KC-97 had the same exact boom system that was on the KB-29, but when Boeing came up with this KC-135, they had to make a faster boom, one that moved quicker and offloaded more gas. And that's when Boeing went back to the drawing board and made it the high-speed boom that's on the KC-135s now. McDonnell Douglas created their fly-by-wire boom, which of course Boeing owns all the KC-10s now. So the boom technology has not been around for a long time. The probe and drogue method has been around for a great deal of time, 1934. And the only reason that the Air Force went to the boom technology was because it was just taking too long to fill up the bombers. 110 minutes is just too long to fill a bomber up. But even a B-52, my largest offload has been 103,000 pounds into a B-52, and we were still connected for 22 minutes to do that kind of an offload at 6,000 pounds a minute. All 4 pumps at 6,000 pounds a minute. So that's where that came into being. That's why we have that. We still can only use 1 pump for F-16s because it's a smaller airplane. The pipes are a little smaller. If we put 2 pumps on, it'll actually blow the F-16 off because of the fuel pressure. F-15s we can use 2, but for the big airplanes, B-52s, the AWACS, the RC-135s, the B-1s, and so forth, 6,000 pounds a minute, all 4 pumps on, and we're in business. All right, let's look at a few more questions here. Stuart wanted to know if I've refueled any Royal Air Force aircraft, and what was my favorite refueling airplane. Favorite refueling airplane was the F-117 by far, and I explained that a little bit earlier. I have not refueled Royal Air Force airplanes. I've refueled Israeli F-16s. I've refueled German Tornadoes. I've refueled, what else? Obviously, a lot of Navy and Marine Corps airplanes. But I've not done a lot of international customers. Now, when I was stationed in the Pacific, I was working in the war plan section. So our tankers, when we were in Okinawa, actually got to refuel a lot of different airplanes, Indonesian F-16s and so forth, where we were participants in a lot of international exercises. So again, our KC-135, KC-10 community has been an air refueling workhorse for a very long time. The A330 has now come online and is doing a great job refueling coalition partners in the Middle East. Your Voyagers in the RAF are refueling a lot of different coalition partners. The Australians actually brought an airplane over to Nellis, kept it here for a while, and they did all of the air refueling certifications with B-52s, B-1s. There are still restrictions on international tankers refueling our low observable stealthy airplanes like the F-22. But F-35s, there's a lot of nations that are flying those now that our coalition partners are refueling, which, like I said, if you have a tanker that has booms and drogues on it, and I could fill it back up through air refueling, it makes a planner's life so much more easier, so much easier. So hopefully that answers your question, Stuart. I'm just going down the list here. Oh, John Ellis, you ask a great question about refueling the F-18s. A little bit of history. The S-3 Viking was the organic tanker for the air wings. Now it's the F-18E Super Hornets and the F-18F Super Hornets. They fly what's called a 5-wet configuration, where you have the 2 big external tanks and then the buddy store in the middle that reels out the drogue. They carry a lot of gas, about 29,000 pounds. And again, we're only filling them up at about 1,000 pounds a minute. So it takes a little longer because of the hose. But here's one of the great things about having a Super Hornet tanker. And it goes back to Desert Storm, actually. And we call it the hose multiplier concept. The Navy strike packages that were coming out of the Red Sea, we didn't have enough time to refuel all 26 airplanes. And we realized that fairly early during Desert Shield. At that time, each of the air wings had KA-6 tankers, the A6 tankers that had a basket in the center line that reeled out from the middle. They would fly with the 4 tanks and the center line tank, and then have this drogue that reeled out. And what we did is we would have the KA-6 come up and park on our wing as another basket. So there would be 2 drogues that they could refuel these 26 plane packages off of. And each of the tankers would have a KA-6 on the wing. And whenever the KA-6 ran out of gas, it would come in behind us, plug back in. We'd fill it back up with 15,000 pounds of gas, and it would go back out on our wing. And that allowed us the ability and gave us the time to refuel these big 26 plane strike packages. Well, during Iraqi freedom and the invasion, I was the chief of the air refueling control team, and I said, we're going to do the same thing. Okay. And the USS Abraham Lincoln was the first deployed carrier that had F-18E Super Hornets on board. And that was a capability they really, really wanted to exploit. So they would come up 5 wet behind our tankers and fill those things back up. But the really cool thing was those Super Hornets could still carry air-to-air missiles on the wingtips and AMRAAMs on the fuselage. So they could defend the tankers at the same time they were refueling, which was a great thing for the tankers, because if something was going to attack us out of Iraq, like a MiG-25 Foxbat or something like that, these F-18 Super Hornets could take care of that. So we were being defended by the same Navy organic tanker airplane that was helping us refuel the carrier air wings. It was a great concept. It worked out really well. They still do a lot of this kind of thing. The Super Hornets will come find a tanker and plug in and fill back up, and they'll go back out amongst the air wing area or over the target areas and help refill things back up. And then obviously during the recovery process, bringing airplanes back aboard, the F-18E Super Hornet is huge for that. But we love during Iraqi freedom having Super Hornets near us. They wouldn't let us have them on our wings. We had to put them 4,000 feet below us. I wanted them right on the wings of the tankers, but the airspace control guy said, no, we can't. We have to have them separated by 4,000 feet. So we just put them 4,000 feet below the KC-135 or the KC-10, which was fine, because all I'd have to do is like look around and find the tanker and come back in and plug back in and fill back up. So I loved having those Super Hornet tankers around us, because I knew they could defend us. If something happened to us and somebody tried to intercept us from out of Iran or out of Iraq, the 5 wet tankers would just drop the external tanks, keep the buddy store, and they'd go off and fight the MiG. It was a great feeling having those super tankers, those Super Hornet tankers around us. All right, F-14 and Tornado Swing Wing, once refueled to give you a show all the time. I'll tell you a funny story about that. I'd been out on the USS John F. Kennedy during Desert Shield, excuse me, and had met an F-14 guy. A week later, I'm out over the Red Sea refueling F-14s from BF-32, and he gave me the squadron frequency, radio frequency. So I dialed it in. I said, hey, Joe, check. Hey, Joe here. Hey, Sluggo's flying the tanker. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And they came up right next to us. And he asked, how much can you give us? I said, hey, Joe, I will give you as much gas as you want. And Mike knows, hey, Joe, Dave Parsons, you've interviewed him. He's a great, great guy. And so he's right outside my window. And we gave him about 10,000 pounds of gas. And when they were done, Hey Joe's pilot, a guy named Dog Kuhn, says, gypsies, burners, now. And I see the engines open up like this, and the big long tongues of flame come out, and they shot off to like 32,000 feet.
Awesome.
Okay. And it was just awesome watching that. Okay. and seeing those big burner flame come out and watch those guys rocket up there. They burn 2,000 pounds a minute. So they just burned 2,000 pounds of the gas of 10,000 I gave them. But it sure was cool to see the show out there. And I've had 14s, Tomcats come out, and they're bored and they're inverted, flying around upside down. A long time ago, we were bringing Marine A4 Skyhawks back from Guam to Hawaii back to the States. And those kinds of missions are long and boring. They're just boring. If nothing goes wrong, you're just out there, you have a few minutes where you're offloading the gas, and then everybody's just kind of flying along, going across the water. And this one A4 pilot started doing rolls, and then he did a barrel roll over the top of us, and back to his position. And we're just like going, "Hey, dude, what are you doing?" He says, "Man, I'm just trying to stay awake out here. I'm just trying to make it fun, and so forth." And so it happens, all the time. You give some fighter pilot a lot of gas, he's going to go out and put on a show for you. That's pretty much the way it goes. So what else do we have here? Philip Collins asks, when you're plugged into the tanker, can you go hands off control, or do you still have to fly?
Oh, you missed
like
you missed a few up there, Sluggo. If you want,
okay, which one?
David Smith. How flexible? You must see that one just above. Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah. How much flexibility do you have in matching speeds and altitudes and refueling? And the toughest plane to match up with. Okay, David, in our air refueling manual, it tells us for F-15s, 28,000 feet, 315 knots, 2 pumps. Okay. I have my autopilot on, altitude hold, but I don't have it hooked up to the navigation system. And to fly our left-hand oval pattern, what we'll do is we'll take the turn knob and we'll go very slowly into our left-hand turn and so forth. That's how I'm flying the tanker. For the receivers, they're completely autopilot off. So they're working pretty hard back there to stay in formation. They're only about 50 feet away from my airplane. That's the normal contact position. The boom will go out. The boomer will stick the pole down in the hole, but it's their job to stay in that contact position. And on the bottom of my tanker, I have 2 rows of lights. One that's an indication of move up or down, and one's an indication of move right or left. They're called pilot director indicating lights. So that's how we do it, okay? Most of the pilots that are receivers behind us are autopilot off and are flying it by hand. The tanker, I have the autopilot on, I've got the altitude hold on, and I'm flying with the autopilot turn knob. And that's really how we do it, okay? We have a training bean that we have to check off, that we fly the airplane autopilot off with heavy receivers like a C-5 or a B-52 or a C-17. And that's a bit challenging. You just have to trim the airplane properly. As the C-5 moves up closer to us, the boom operator will call, like 50 feet, 40 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet. And every time I hear him say that, 50 feet, I'll go bzz, bzz, bzz with the trim. 40 feet, bzz, bzz, bzz with the trim. And that trims my airplane out so that his bow wave isn't affecting my airplane as he pulls up close to me. But again, most of the time I've got the autopilot on, and it's, again, air refueling is pretty boring, and you want boring, okay? Hopefully that answers your question. Toughest plane to match up with, without a doubt, was the C-5, because he could literally move the boom right or left, and could actually fly our airplane. Some of you may have seen the picture of the B-52 hooked up to the tanker at 90 degrees of bank like this. And that used to be a maneuver that we did during our training periods, okay, when we were upgrading to instructor pilot. And by moving the boom one way or the other, the B-52 was actually flying our airplane. It was really the oddest thing to see. And we do these leaves like this, like this. And it was fun to watch from the back. Holy smokes. So the boom acts like a big rudder, and the bow wave of the C5, you can really feel it when it comes underneath the tanker to hook up. And that's why they go very slowly when they come up to the contact position, okay? Okay, Northern Nightmare, have you had any incidents in refueling? My very first combat support mission in Desert Shield, a Saudi F-15 broke the nozzle off my boom. I mean, broke it, snapped right off, and you could feel it through the whole airplane. He kind of underrun our tanker, and he's looking up at us like this. Mike, our boom operator, said, breakaway, breakaway, breakaway. He didn't punch the right buttons. He just took the throttle and the stick and went, oh, whoop, like that. And it literally took the nozzle right off the boom. Gas is pouring out until we got the line valve turned off and everything. And he didn't get all of his gas. So he came back up underneath us. Stallion 6-1 to request pre-contact. And Mikey's saying, look, we can't give you any more gas. You just took the only method we have of giving you gas. It's in your airplane. And you see him turn around and go like this. And he looks down at his receptacle and he sees our nozzle in his receptacle, and he's shaking his head like this. And he looks up at us up in the window and he goes, we make air mess, no? We all started laughing. Yep, we make air mess. He goes, okay, I go home now. And he put that F-15 in 90 degrees of bank and just took off. 3 days later, that nozzle was back in our maintenance section, sitting on a table. They'd sent it back to us. So I had a brute force disconnect with my very first Saudi F-15 receiver.
Right, so just before you carry on, Sluggo, we're going to have 15 minutes left. So are you happy to go for 15 minutes?
You bet.
Perfect. So get your questions in, guys, because we've got 15 minutes left. And yeah, let's go.
Okay, I'm just scrolling down here. Sorry that I missed that one up closer. Okay. Convert 737s to tactical tankers for probe aircraft. My thoughts. John, that's a great question, and I'll tell you something. That was actually a proposal that our weapons school put to Air Mobility Command, saying the big tanker's nice, but it's not about how much gas you can put in the air. It's about how many contact points you can put the gas into. And having a big tanker that can refuel smaller tankers and spread them out would be fabulous, okay? The new engine technology on the 737s with the CFM56s, which is what we flew on our tanker, they're fabulous engines. We were making gas. We only burn about 8,000 to 10,000 pounds an hour in our KC-135 with the new CFM56s. Ideally, I would like to have a couple of big tankers and a lot of smaller tankers that have boom and drogue that are air refuelable that I could spread out across the deserts of Iraq and Syria, okay? They took that report, said, yeah, okay, we got it. It wasn't too long after that that they had the air refueling competition that, of course, Airbus won first. Then they had the recompetition and Boeing won. And my thoughts are, again, it's great having 1 million pounds of gas in the air, but if I can only put it through one pipe, that's a problem. If I can take that 1 million pounds of gas, John, and put it in a lot of smaller tankers spread throughout an air refueling area and create a system where I have a lot of these smaller tankers that are up, then that's the way you want your air refueling system to go, particularly if they can do both probe and boom receivers. And we put that idea up there, but they went ahead and had the competition, bought the bigger tankers. But at least, John, we have them air refuelable now, and they could do probe and drogue receivers and boom receivers. And that's the one thing we really, really fought for after the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq, is we have to have an air refuelable tanker with baskets and with a boom. Okay. John says, I got some backseat time in a Super Hornet during testing. Was a Simtech. I bet you that was a lot of fun. I've got F-15 time, John. 3 missions in an F-15 and S-3 Viking cat shot and catapult arrested landing. Again, those are great experiences that I will never forget the rest of my life. Ian, you asking about pounds versus tons instead of liters and gallons. We always want to know how much our airplane weighs. So that's why we always use pounds and tons and so forth. The U.S. Air Force, we've always used pounds of gas, not gallons. Very rarely did I ever talk in the air refueling community about how many gallons I offloaded. It was always about how many pounds I offloaded. And again, it's just because of the weight and balance of the aircraft. And that's how we keep track of it. So that's why we used it.
Mark, I think you missed a great question just above Ian. Philip
Where?
Collins there. When you plunged into the tanker, can you hands off controls, or do you still have to fly like you're not attracted? Listen.
Yeah, that was the one I was talking about, where we fly with the autopilot on, altitude hold switch on, and the receivers fly autopilot off. Okay, when we're not attached, there's the receivers are still hand flying it. Okay, that's the only way I've ever seen anybody refuel is with hand flying it. Okay, as the tanker, we can keep our autopilot on, but I have to use the turn knob and I have to use the altitude hold. We'll stay normally at 28,000 feet for most of the fighters. The B-52 we refuel at 28,000 feet. The B-1 we do a little lower, 21,000 feet. But again, all of the receivers hand fly the airplane, no autopilot on. And do you still have to fly like that, like you're not attached? Yeah, you do. It's, as a receiver, it's all hand flying. Okay. I know about the A4. Ever refueled a UAV, John? No, I never have. To be quite honest with you, I don't know if I wanted a UAV underneath me. But now they're testing that system and they're working all the bugs out of that. And some of you may have seen Omega's tankers refueling the UCAV vehicle out over the Patuxent River range and everything. And that's going to come. Boeing just won a big contract to make UAV tankers for the Navy. So that system is going to get more refined and more refined to the point that I don't think it'll be a problem. I'm an old guy. I didn't want a pilotless airplane behind me. But now that technology has matured, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Triple drogue refueling, 3 jets in formation. John, that was a specifically designed KB-29 and it was the only one that had those 3 drogues on it. And that's now in a museum somewhere. Low-level refueling during deep strike operations. Zigzag, that's an interesting question. And I have only done low-level air refueling at 3,000 feet with an MC-130 behind me. But during the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, several of their 707 tankers refueled, I think it was 16 F-4s that were going around Iraq through Turkey and then Syria and then to the H3 complex to bomb it. And they were refueling at 315 knots at 300 feet. 300 feet. Okay, 100 meters maybe at 315 knots. That does not leave a lot of room for error. And it was a very historic strike because all these airplanes went in and bombed this H3 complex in Western Iraq. And they did it at 300 feet through the mountains of Turkey, then across the deserts of Syria. I think when they went back, they stayed at 300 feet with the tankers that joined them until they got over the Turkish mountains, and then climbed up to refuel off of the 707s and a 747 tanker too. I can't remember the name of the operation, Mike, but believe it or not, Wikipedia's got a great write-up on how they did it and what happened. But 300 feet with fighters on your wings at 315 knots does not leave a lot of room for error. Because, I mean, one bad stick input, you know, and you're down 100 feet, 200 feet, you know, you have to be really careful. I enjoyed doing low-level refueling. Scared a lot of fishing boats while we were doing it because they'd see this big tanker and this MC-130 come flying over the top of them, you know, down low. I remember one mission we had down off the Philippine coast where you could see the guys on the boats kind of scrambling for the wheelhouse when we flew over the top of them. But low-level air refueling has been around, and it's a concept that we can use, but the only time I've ever done it was in training, again, with MC-130s. I've never done fighters down low, okay? What do I think of the KC-46 and the issues? You know, Boeing is not having a good year right now with the 737 MAX and the problems that they're finding with the KC-46. But I have no doubt that they'll work it out, okay? Whatever changes that they're going to have to make in leadership or their processes and so forth, Boeing will work it out, okay? I mentioned earlier, the Dream tanker is a tanker that has an air refueling receptacle and we can refill, has a boom, has a drogue. The new KC-46s have some defensive systems built into it too. It has the Link 16, so we can get the air picture and so forth. It's really a good tanker. And I have no doubt that Boeing will work all the bugs out of it. The Air Force will continue accepting these tankers. But what I think is we have to see what's going to happen in the future. The way that we do our competitions for the next generation tankers, you know, we had KCX, we're going to have KCY, is they look at performance, past performance. And Boeing's past performance on the 767 program has not been good. It's been over-scheduled, over budget. They found all kinds of problems with it. I have no doubt that they'll work it out. But I think for the next competition, for the next generation of tankers, bigger tankers, Boeing's going to have some problems explaining to them why, you know, it took longer to get the airplane fielded, why they had so many problems with the boom, you know, all those kinds of things. But I mean, they're a smart company. They're going through some problems right now. Every company goes through some of these things, and I have no doubt they'll fix it. Okay. To compare though, the A330 Voyager, the Airbus tanker, is doing phenomenally well. It's had several deployments over to the Middle East. It's done really well. The Australians, like I said, got their airplane certified on a lot of our different airplanes. They're able to carry a lot of cargo in it, air refuelable, boom and drogue, just like we like them, like a KC-10. So I'm happy that the A330 is doing well. Saddens me that the KC-46 still has some issues, but they're going to work through all that. Okay.
Right. Okay. I think, Mark, we're going to stop it right there because we've been going for an hour. But I hope you guys have enjoyed it. But before we go, I want to tell you everyone about, you have to go and check out Mark's it's your first book, isn't it, Mark?
Yes, it sure was. Tanker Pilot. Yeah.
Tanker Pilot. And I think that's available from Amazon, and absolutely great. There's some great pictures in there. But let us know what's your latest business like for the guys who've just joined us.
The book is doing well. It was a fun book to write, and it's got 32 pictures in it. That's one of the unusual things about this book. Very unique thing about the book that I wrote is I had my camera on the floor with me everywhere I went. I had 4,000 color slides when I finished my career.
Wow.
And I have pictures of a lot of the events that I talk about in the book. Some of the events I have talked to you about, like when I had the brute force disconnect with the Saudi F-15, there is actually a picture of that F-15 behind my tanker, and you can see, right, Mike? You can see the nozzle in his receptacle in that picture. I mean, it's right there, okay? And the B-52 behind my tanker and a bunch of other stuff. I had an incredible career. There's even a picture of me driving the aircraft carrier with the USS Seattle out the side. So all of you, please go out and pick up Tanker Pilot Lessons from the Cockpit by Mark Hasara.
Yeah, I'll link this all of Mark's, books and everything below in the comments and the description. Sorry, but like before we go, you have to tell us about Wall Pilot because there's a few people who've just joined us and they might not have heard.
Okay. If you notice the pictures behind Mike here, he's got those profile drawings behind him. Okay. I have always wanted to have a nice big picture of a tanker on my wall that is customized with a squadron that I flew in, personalized with my name underneath the canopy. Now you can. I have created a company with a couple of digital artists where we customize wall graphics that you peel off and stick on your walls 4 to 8 feet in length that are personalized with your name on the canopy rails, a tail number of an airplane that you flew or as a crew chief you worked on, a weapons load that you loved carrying around. And these are available through my company Wall Pilot that we're just getting started right now. We're working on a website, but if any of you are interested in having one of these graphics on your walls, go to Wall Pilot on Facebook and contact me via instant message and say, hey, Mark, I'd love to have a Typhoon from this squadron with this weapons load on it, and we can do it for you, okay? And again, we can make it 4 feet to 8 feet long. We can do the squadron emblems for it, but all of these are personalized, like I said, with your name on it, an airplane you worked on, a weapons load you love carrying around or whatever, okay? Wall Pilot, personalized wall graphics for your home or office.
And I'll also link this in this video, but no, Mark, you're going to get the best quality. I mean, he's a great guy and you're going to get a great quality graphic there. So, but Mark, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh,
and,
thank you.
Sluggo, we're going to get you back on eventually because you got so many stories, but I appreciate you being on the show.
Hey, Mike, it's been awesome to be with you again. And folks, stay in touch with Aircrew Interview. He's got so many good people that he's interviewed. A lot of friends of mine, like I mentioned, Dave Parsons, Jeff Felmuth, a lot of these guys have wonderful stories. And each week, Mike brings you a different interview, more stories, and some of them sad, some of them really funny, some of them just nail biting. Holy smokes, how'd you live through that? I can't say enough about Aircrew Interview, and Mike is a fantastic interviewer. So I always enjoy coming on, Mike. You know that. Anytime.
Oh well, I'm blushing here, Sluggo. But thanks very much. But
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for the praise. But yeah, we're definitely going to get you back on, and yeah, go and check out Mark's his book, Tanker Pilot. I'm going to show it one more time, and go and check him out on Facebook, Wall Pilot, and get your graphic right now. So Sluggo, thanks very much, and yeah, hope you enjoy your rest of your day.
I will, and I hope you guys enjoy your evening over there. Have a nice cup of tea for me, will you?
I will do.